Hello everyone! So today I'd like to talk about a common misconception in the world of K-pop collecting. Specifically, I'll be talking about plastic sleeves, either these sort of pocket pages that you might put in your binder, or these sort of sleeves for individual photo cards, and about whether they truly need to be acid-free. I'll explain what this term really means, and at the end I'll cover what kind of plastic sleeves you should be using. Now before I get into the substance of this video, I want to get a couple things out of the way really quick. First, there are a bunch of sources in the description for everything I'm saying. I'm not a chemist and I'm not a conservator, so I might have made some mistakes. If you have any questions or just don't believe me or whatever, please consult the sources that I link below. I got a lot of my information from the museum management program of the National Park Service, so these are people who are actual experts when it comes to the conservation of media. Second, I swear my intention with this video is not to be annoying and pedantic. I mean, am I being annoying and pedantic? Yes, absolutely, but I swear that's not the point of the video. I wanted to make this video to help assuage some people's fears. In videos and in comments all the time, I see tons of people really worried or stressed about this issue, or even throwing things away just because the product they bought doesn't say acid-free on the packaging. So I wanted to help by explaining as best as I can why this might not be as big of an issue as it seems, and also by giving some clearer guidance on exactly what kind of plastic sleeves you should be buying. So with that, we can get to the central question of this video. Can acid damage your photo cards? Yes. Do your plastic sleeves need to be acid-free? Or rather, if you use sleeves that don't say they're acid-free on them, are you going to damage your photo cards? The answer is no. And the reason for that is that the term acid-free doesn't really have anything to do with plastic. Now, I'm sure me saying that brings up a lot of questions. I mean, absolutely everyone says, do not buy pocket pages or photo card sleeves unless they say they're PVC-free and acid-free. In front of me, I have the packaging for some Ultra Pro pocket pages. They say right here, acid-free. These BCW sleeves, they say acid-free right there. These Dragon Shield sleeves on the bottom, they say acid-free. Now, these are some of the most popular and reputable companies in collecting. If there's no such thing as acid-free plastic, how can they say that on the package? And to be clear, they aren't lying. I mean, these products are acid-free in the same way that the shirt I'm wearing is acid-free. What I mean by that is, when it comes to archival products, the term acid-free typically only refers to paper. I will try to keep this short so as not to bore you to death, but in order to understand this in relation to plastics, I have to briefly talk about pH and about paper. This will be super brief because for this video, you only need to know one thing about pH. So pH is a way to measure how acidic or basic an aqueous solution is. And aqueous solution is the key part of that sentence. In order to find the pH of something, you have to dissolve it in water. Now, I said acid-free describes paper, so what is acid-free paper? So if you're not aware, most paper is made of wood pulp combined with various additives, some of which can be acidic. You can test this by, you guessed it, dissolving the paper in water and testing the pH of that solution. Now, in the 1930s, a chemist and librarian named William Barrow discovered that these acidic papers deteriorate rapidly and as such are not suitable for archival purposes. They just don't last long. Generally, what happens is that the paper comes in contact with water from the atmosphere, and this allows for certain chemical reactions where acids can form or react with the cellulose in the paper, causing it to break down. Long story short, paper production later changed to use different additives and to prevent these chemical reactions from occurring. This is what the term acid-free is meant to refer to. Paper that has been produced in such a way that prevents or reduces the likelihood of acidic byproducts forming. Now, that doesn't mean no acid ever forms, just that it is greatly lessened and the paper lasts much longer than these acidic earlier papers. And if you use paper in your binders, for example, to put behind an object as I've done here, I've got a white sheet of paper in between these objects, then you do need acid-free paper. Now, the good news is the vast majority of paper these days is already acid-free and it will say it clearly on the label. So it's unlikely that you really need to worry that much about this. Just check on the label when you buy paper for this purpose. Now, I did that whole digression and explained all that to return to the topic of plastic sleeves. So earlier I claimed that the term acid-free does not apply to them. This goes back to what I said about pH. To measure pH, you have to dissolve something in water. The plastics typically used to make these sorts of products do not dissolve in water, and that means you can't measure their pH, which means they can't be acidic. So these companies aren't lying when they say their products are acid-free, it's just irrelevant because you can't measure the acidity of these products in the first place. So all this begs the question, if acid-free is a term that's only relevant for paper, why do these companies claim their plastic sleeves are acid-free? And the answer to that is marketing. At some point, some wires got crossed and consumers, that's us, began to believe that all their supplies needed to be labeled as acid-free, including the plastic stuff. It's impossible to know exactly when or why or how this happened. It just did, and it's a thing that people believe now. I mean, you see it all the time in the Kpop collecting community and also in other collecting communities as well. Now look at it from the perspective of these companies. If the people buying your products really truly believe that they need acid-free plastic to the point that they won't buy your product if it doesn't say acid-free on it, what are you going to do? You're going to put it on your packaging so you don't potentially turn away misinformed buyers. And like I said before, calling these products acid-free isn't a lie, it just doesn't mean anything in this context. So for the company, there's no harm in just saying it's acid-free to make people happy. Now in turn, buyers and collectors who buy these products are going to see acid-free on the packaging and see that as confirmation that plastic being acid-free matters, and the misconception just gets more deeply entrenched. Now I went to all this trouble to explain why the words acid-free on a package of plastic sleeves don't mean anything, but I don't want you to think that means that the kind of plastic you buy is meaningless. People always say you need PVC-free and acid-free sleeves, and they're absolutely right about that first part. You should not use sleeves made of PVC, like this one that I have right here. I'm not going to explain in super detail, you just need to know that this kind of soft, bendable PVC that binder pages are made out of can deteriorate over time, even at room temperature. Specifically, it's the additives that help make the plastic soft and pliable that can actually migrate out of the plastic sleeve and harm any items they come in contact with, so your photo cards. Now, of course, it's simple to just only buy sleeves that go out of their way to say PVC-free on the label, but some packaging doesn't say that, and that doesn't necessarily mean that those sleeves are unsafe. For example, these two items both say they're PVC-free, but the BCW sleeves just say they're acid-free. They don't say PVC-free on the label. So the most foolproof way to tell if a sleeve is safe is to find the place on the label where it says what kind of plastic it is made out of and double check that kind of plastic is safe. If it's not on the packaging, it's probably on the company website, as in the case of these BCW items, but in a lot of cases it will be on the packaging. Now I'm going to be showing US plastic labeling codes as an example, but what I say about the kinds of plastic applies everywhere. It's just that if a product is manufactured outside the United States, it probably won't have this specific symbol or number on it. So if it says PVC in the US, that's a 3. As we previously covered, that's no good. Absolutely don't use this product in your collection. Now for safe plastics. Most binder storage products these days are made of polypropylene, including all the ones I have in front of me right now. If they don't outright say polypropylene, a lot of times they'll say PP plastic or just PP on them. Personally, that's what I always look for. I only use polypropylene sleeves in my collection. However, more rarely, you might also see LDPE polyethylene or archival polyester. Now, you may occasionally find yourself in possession of something you really want to use, and for whatever reason, you don't have the packaging or the information that will tell you what plastic it's made out of. I can give a couple tips on identifying soft PVCs, but first I want to give the caveat that if you're judging anything by feel or smell, that it is going to be subjective and you can't be 100% sure that you're correct. So it's really up to you whether you think the risk is worth it. Now that being said, there are 2 characteristics that I personally have found to be present in every item I've encountered that I've already known to be PVC beforehand. The first and less foolproof characteristic is a thick and almost rubbery texture. I've personally never encountered a soft PVC that didn't feel this way. The only reason I say it's not foolproof is because there are some thicker polypropylene sleeves that can confuse you. Now personally, this is a pretty thick polypropylene sleeve. Having it next to even this thinner PVC sleeve, I can feel the difference, but if you don't have direct comparisons, like I said, it's not foolproof. However, if you have a very thin sleeve like this one, I feel reasonably confident that this can't be PVC. Now the second and the more distinguishing characteristic is a plasticky smell. The biggest tip I can give you to identifying soft PVC is to think of an inflatable pool toy. If you've ever held one of these, you know that texture, but more importantly, you know exactly the kind of plastic smell I'm talking about. Now, inflatable pool toys are typically made of PVC. And every time I've had a binder sleeve that I've known to be PVC, if I smell it, I can smell that pool toy kind of plastic smell. On the other hand, I can take one of these polypropylene sleeves, and no matter how hard I press it to my face, they just don't really smell like anything at all. Now again, it's up to you whether you're confident enough about that to be willing to use risky items. I take it on a case-by-case basis. If I'm not 95% sure that it isn't PVC, I probably won't use it. Now that was a lot. So to drive this home, I just want to circle back to what I said in the beginning of the video. The point of this wasn't to just be nitpicky and annoying, but to help people make informed choices about their collections. Usually in the collecting community, I see people using PVC-free and acid-free as like this inseparable phrase, those two terms always together. And as a result, I also frequently come across comments where people find a product that they know is PVC-free, but then when they see that it doesn't mention being acid-free, they don't know what to think and they worry about whether the product's really safe. So if you were able to get through all this, I do hope this is helpful, and I hope I was able to explain this properly. Again, I'm just a hobbyist trying my best, so I apologize if I made any errors. I've given myself a headache with all this, so I'm sure you have one too. Let's wrap this up. Stay safe and good luck collecting.